There was recently an interview with two developers from BSG that was done in Russian as part of some sort of community stream. But we're going to get into that in a little bit. We first got a couple of other news, like a tweet from Nikita saying that the neck hitbox will be moved to be part of the torso instead of the head, which it is at the moment. And finally, this change took way too long for them to implement, and this will fix a major problem that Tarkov currently has of having a effectively unarmorable one-shot hitbox on the character model, especially one that is so exposed from the front as well. Now, I don't think this means that it will be armored with chest armor, which I've seen some people say. I think instead this means that it will be part of the chest health pool. So instead of taking a shot to the neck and getting one shot, because it's part of the head health pool of only 35, it will now cause that damage to the chest instead, which means it will fucking suck to get shot in the neck, because it will be like taking a chest shot without armor, but you won't get one shot, at least with most of the ammo in the game. And this will definitely change up the meta, and I can't wait. There's nothing on when exactly this will happen, as he tweeted this out, I believe, yesterday morning. So I haven't seen any updates on this. Presumably this is just coming with the next sizable patch, or maybe like that optimization patch they were talking about. The Flea is opening on January the 14th, 1800 or 6 p.m. Moscow time instead of yesterday when it was supposed to open. So we're going to get a few more days without the flea market. Apparently this was changed due to community feedback, and apparently this will be accompanied by technical fixes and balancing, quote unquote. I don't know exactly what that means, but that's going to be exciting to see. So let's get into the main meat of this video, which is this interview that was done. It's sort of more of an unofficial interview. It was apparently this sudden joint live stream with a few developers from BSG, where they played Tarkov and discussed a lot of information, basically. So it was Domontovich, who's a game designer, and Morbid Desir, who's a level designer with BSG. And they just answered questions. So, like they also state here in the summary of the interview, that this is the opinion of the individual developers, so not necessarily the official stance of BSG as a studio. So basically just take everything with a pinch of salt, because this isn't necessarily what BSG is going to stand for, you know, or stand by what is being said here. So let's get into it. There's still some interesting stuff that came out, so I want to talk about that. The developers are confident that no one will remain indifferent after completing the story quests. I'm assuming this just means that they have faith in the storyline and that it will be good and compelling. That's about all I gather from this. I don't really know what else they can really mean. After the end of the New Year's event, players will have access to the APC Driver Quests. BSG will separately inform when exactly the winter event will end. So we're getting the new quests from the APC Driver after the Christmas event, which I believe lasts until the 15th of January. Correct me if I'm wrong, but I think that's what they said. The New Year's tree from the shelter will most likely disappear with the end of the winter event, also then the 15th most likely. So then that will be gone. BSG is interested in continuing to release paid clothing sets. The developers received good feedback after the recent clothing sets that appeared with patch 0.16. So more cosmetics are coming into the game. I don't really see why the developers have to monetize the game any more than they already do. That's a hard thing to justify for me, but again, they can make money on it because people will buy it, so why wouldn't they? I just think that if they want to have cosmetics in the game, then just have them as rewards, you know, for in-game events and accomplishments instead of having them be paid for. But that's just my opinion. Let me know what you guys think about them adding more paid cosmetics. What do you guys think about that? Because honestly, I think it's a bit unnecessary or a bit much for monetization, but yeah, let me know what you think. The recent decision to nerf the Scav gear was made because the AI sometimes had better gear than the PMCs at such an early stage of the wipe. And this makes sense. That's not quite how it should be, so I think this is fine. I don't know why this doesn't just scale with like average player level in the raid or something like that. Obviously not too much scaling, but enough that early wipe, it's not overwhelming, but at the same time, Scavs are actually they have some firepower, you know, later on. Decent change, okay. The decision to introduce Found in Raid for the hideout upgrades was made at the very last moment. Initially, no one was going to change the gameplay so much with this new patch. This surprised me, honestly, because I expected them to have put a lot more thought into a decision with such a big impact on progression. But I guess it's a lot of shooting from the hip over at BSG lately. So I do think this is a good change, though. It does prevent people from farming millions on screws and bolts, you know? And it keeps item loot relevant when you're just going through the raid. You actually kind of have to look for specific stuff. It changes the prio of looting from being based on what sells the most on the Flea to what you actually need. But I can't help, feel that this in part might be to try and push people into upgrading their game edition to EOD or Unheard, because stash management on a standard account has to be pure pain this wipe. Like, I know it's rough enough on an EOD account, so I can't fucking imagine. Now, the main difficulty in implementing loading magazines on the go while walking is creating the animations for every magazine in the game and displaying them correctly from a third-person perspective. To be honest, I did not even know that this was something they were thinking about. I guess maybe ABI inspired a bit here, despite being a copy. And you will at some point be able to actually pack mags while walking, which I honestly do not mind at all. Risk-reward gameplay is always a good thing, so I welcome this. There are no plans to equate the characteristics of the AK and AR systems. The developers are trying to make it as realistic as possible as far as it is playable. I guess this is them making them more similar in terms of recoil mainly. That's what I imagine this means. I think the argument about realism is kind of fucked on this front because recoil in Tarkov is far from realistic. But it is a game, so it shouldn't be, because realistic recoil would not do well in a game like Tarkov, which I suspect is what they mean with playable. I have always thought the AK recoil is way too heavy-handed though, especially the 545 AKs, which they should not be kicking anywhere close to as much as they do. Like 545 is very similar to 556, 556 barely having more muscle, energy, and velocity, I believe. And the AK also has, a slower fire rate than the 556 platforms, which in my opinion should make them way more controllable than they are in their current state, especially because they're also comparable statistically, right? The 556 ammo and 545 ammo is relatively similar in terms of properties with damage and penetration, which just leads everyone to just using 556 all the time. There is no real upside to using the 545s. So yeah, I would love to see some changes there. The USEC Predator jacket is locked behind the Snowball achievement for 2 reasons. Because of community request and also the appearance, but yeah, I guess just having a worthy reward for one of the most difficult achievements in the game, which, hey, that's fair. Some of the neighboring locations that are outside of the map have practically no influence on performance, so there is no point in removing them for the sake of minimal optimization gain. I guess they were asked about removing assets or something that could have taken up performance, so apparently they just don't. So yeah, there you go. I don't really know where Tarkov could save the most on performance. I don't know if there is an obvious area. I know it is a very CPU-heavy game, so I imagine AI, loot, maybe ballistics, anything calculation-wide or that has to do with loading a lot of values is the problem. But maybe someone with some actual development experience can enlighten us in the comments where Tarkov could actually focus on their optimization. It would be interesting to hear if anyone knows. There's going to be new cases for the stash, apparently. I'm assuming this is like cases to store stuff in. But these are definitely not containers for storing helmets or body armor. I don't really know what type of cases this would be. Maybe they're just higher end versions of the existing cases that we have, because I don't see what new item group they could really introduce a case for that doesn't have a case already. Like, maybe it's an XL Scav junk box for the suffering standard account gamers, maybe, but something like that. Now, the developers did not disclose the details of the Arena Battle Pass because they want to surprise players with interesting content. I don't really mind that, but I assume this will just be a lot of regular, normal Battle Pass fill, like some cosmetics or XP boosts, etc. Personally, I don't really find this very interesting as I don't really play Arena very much. But this will probably be skins usable in Tarkov as well, I would imagine, as that would be a huge pull for people to actually play Arena. So we're just going to have to wait and see, but that's what I imagine. The skins will not turn Tarkov into Call of Duty, apparently. The developers want to add only realistic camouflages without crap. quote unquote. Good. I think they've been very clear about this the entire way as far as I've known. So, yeah, and I think Nikita also posted an M4 skin at some point, didn't he? If I recall correctly. So weapon skins, I guess, are kind of confirmed and have been for a while. But yeah, imagine running around Tarkov with your sparkling pink AK with strobe lights or some shit, you know? Like, yeah, I can do without that. Thank you. So I'm assuming this will be more akin to Battlefield 4 weapon camos, which I believe was, besides a few exceptions, it was only based on like realistic camo that actually had a purpose, like urban or woodland, or, you know, it had use areas that it was actually intended to be used for. So that could be very interesting. Regarding the festive atmosphere in the game, the developers deliberately moved away from realism and created a New Year's celebration at the locations, yeah. Again, this was done only for the duration of the event for the sake of festive fun. Just for fun, so this will all go away after the event ends, so that's fine. Radiation is still in the plans, but it will most likely be postponed to DLC content. Okay, I was expecting to have radiation in about 5 years ago. You know, we've had the radiation indicator on the character screen for like fucking 10 years at this point, and now it's a DLC. So, okay, fine. One of the original concepts of the Lightkeeper's services was to simplify quests for money. I don't think this means that we will get that, but I do think Lightkeeper needs a little bit of a rework in my opinion, but I'm actually going to get into that in another video, so I'm going to save that for then. In this wipe, the checkboxes for the hideout, which means the found in raid, will definitely not be cancelled. So found in raid for hideout items are not going away. Again, I think this is good. I think it's a good change overall. The ability to roll up posters for the hideout, as well as the ability to compactly store them in the stash, is being discussed. Yeah, okay. The ability to put marks on the game map is planned, but you should not expect it in the near future because it is not a priority. Hard to know exactly what they mean with this. Like, this is probably not markers like pings and stuff like you have in PUBG, which would make like no sense for Tarkov. So that's probably not it. Maybe it's like beacons like smoke and infrared, which I also doubt. I think the thing that makes the most sense is that this is likely just placing markers on the actual paper maps that you can find as items in the game. I mean, this could maybe make them relevant, I suppose, at least for some people, but personally, I don't ever see myself using that. Like, I just sell those items. They're completely useless. So I think they're useful for a craft in the intel station, but that's about it. So yeah, I think they would have to make a bigger change than that if they want to try and make it relevant, make those items relevant, but we'll see. The idea of making an event with the laboratory without light is still in the BSG plans. This would be cool. I think this would make for a very, very interesting lab event. Imagine running around labs only having flashlights to see shit. That would be pretty cool. I've heard people talk about this before though, so I don't know. But anyways, it would be a very cool event to see. At the time of the release of patch point 12, mortar shelling was supposed to occur at the reserve location if only a large group of players ran across open terrain. So for example, the parade ground near the helicopter, which is between the barracks or the pawn buildings. But at that time, the developers did not have the opportunity to implement such an idea. This would be way more interesting to have as a dynamic mechanic instead of just this static timed event, which is what the mortar event was. Because personally, I thought the mortar event was just... It was just obnoxious for the most part, to be honest. It's a cool concept, but I think if they implemented it in that kind of a way, like they initially apparently thought about, that would be way, way, way more interesting. And it would also make sense to actually have on reserve, right? Because it's a military base. So yeah, I would love to see something like this again. I think it could actually be a cool idea. Please just no mortar event again, because I got my fill last time. Nikita periodically plays Tarkov for his own pleasure. I would have loved to see that. Can we get like a Nikita playing Tarkov stream from BSG? I'd love to see that, because personally, my perception has been that Nikita isn't really that heavily involved in the actual development of Tarkov anymore. So that's honestly very interesting to hear. Very, very interesting. One of the possible options for updating the Ground Zero location is to add closed marked rooms with good loot. What good loot? Because marked rooms are so fucking underwhelming. Then again, I haven't actually hit any this wipe, I believe, so maybe they're hot shit again now, but I somehow doubt it. If anyone's been in the marked rooms this wipe, let me know what the loot is like, because I'm very, very interesting. I wouldn't be surprised if it's basically just as shitty as it's always been, so, or been for the last at least a couple of wipes. There is a chance that players will be able to get events achievements again. So I suppose this means that we're actually getting some of the past events again, by the sound of it. I guess a lot of people probably are cringing quite hard now at the idea of maybe having a zombie event again. But but yeah, apparently we're going to get some of the events again. I would take it. At an early stage, Lightkeeper was planned to have an exit service from the island, but the developers considered it too abusive. Okay, I don't really have a lot of thoughts on this, but Lighthouse needs an expansion or a rework. Please, BSG, for the love of God, do something about that map. There will be no expansion on the Streets of Tarkov location. Honestly, I'd like to see them try, because people can't make that fucking map run well now. So I think they also talked about splitting it in two with like some sort of loading screen in between. I don't know. I don't know if that's actually going to help as much as people might think. I would personally prefer them to not do that, because I think that would take away quite a lot from the map. Because the map is very good. I love Streets. I would almost call myself a Streets main. I know a lot of people have a lot of problems running it, so I understand the thought behind it. I just honestly, I hope they don't, because I think the map plays very well the way it is now. There's apparently also an optimization patch coming, so yeah, there is maybe hope for the non-AMD flagship gamers out there. And to be honest, like, Streets is even kind of a pain on a 9800X3D or a 7800X3D as well. So, but yeah, Streets does not need anything more. That's definitely for sure. It doesn't need an expansion anyway, so I don't really see the point of adding it. What does need some work is Lighthouse, guys. Lighthouse, please. Now, Brandon Herrera is also happy about the future appearance of the AK-50 in Tarkov. I can't wait for that, dude. I love Brandon. So very cool that they're putting that in. It's going to be interesting to see what kind of properties that platform will be given, though. That's going to be very interesting to see. But yeah, exciting. The SBEU, I guess, or however the fuck you pronounce it, or SBEU, yeah, is a favorite playstyle of many BSG developers. Now, I had to fucking Google this, and apparently this is quote-unquote fight simulation in extreme conditions. So apparently this is super realistic hardcore fight simulation, which, as far as I understand it, is a step or two probably further into the realism and hardcore than Tarkov is currently, which explains a lot of why the game is balanced the way it is and why Tarkov might have the problems it does. Let's say it like that. But yeah, another video. Leg hitbox protection is not planned for Tarkov. Okay, not a surprise really. I never really expected them to do that. The idea of adding the Sanitar's jacket as a cosmetic item similar to the Master of Ultra achievement, which is getting the killer tracksuit obviously, was discussed during the stream. Cool. I guess there's going to be a new meta of baiting players as Sanitar, not just as killer. Faction skills that gave bonuses for choosing one side or another during character creation have been cancelled. Okay, so no faction-based bonuses. Probably a good thing. I guess this means like proficiency with like AKs for bears and proficiencies with AR platforms for USECs. I think that was like the main difference that I think we actually have currently. Are they removing that then? Maybe they have removed it and I just didn't catch it. I don't know. But yeah, I do also remember them talking about there being more differences between the factions, which I guess they now have just then completely scrapped. So interesting. But again, probably a good change. The mechanic of using the multi-tool to disassemble weapons will most likely not appear in the game. This would only be useful in a few specific cases, so this is not really a big deal, which is probably also the reason for why they don't bother introducing this, I would imagine. But again, I don't see, you know, why it would be, why they wouldn't introduce it. You know, it does have some use, but maybe they don't consider it important enough. There are also some content and quality of life improvements that are still planned for EFT, apparently. So, clothing for owners of the Edge of Darkness edition. Okay, that's me. So, interesting. I'd love to see what they can come up with. A rotation of regular raid activities that will take place at locations. For example, the mortar shelling from the previous wipe patch. Again, very cool. I'd love to see more dynamic and interesting raid events or activities, if they want to call it that. I just think please do it actually dynamically. Like, don't just put in a lot of this static shit, which just is obnoxious. Try and make it a little bit dynamic, a little bit fun. That would add so much more to the gameplay of it. Character knockdown mechanics. This is very interesting. I don't know if I'm a fan, to be honest, but maybe this is only for certain types of injuries, and hopefully at least not regardless of where you get hit. It would be really dumb if you take a 308 to the fucking head and you get knocked down instead of getting just sent back to the lobby, which is what should happen. But yeah, very interesting. I think this could potentially add a lot to the game if it's done correctly, but we're going to have to wait and see about implementation in this case. Free camera for offline mode. Okay. Weapon module filter. Use parts only from traders on the weapon assembly screen. So I think this is a nice change, nice quality of life that you can actually filter, use parts from traders, probably prevent yourself getting scammed. So that's pretty nice. The text search for items in the stash. That's very nice quality of life. This should have been in ages ago. I don't know why it hasn't been. But yeah, hopefully this is going to come soon. Improvements to interaction with presets. Yes, very good. Reworked interface for the insurance return screen. So yeah, I guess that means the entire insurance return screen. Honestly, I don't really use it. I just insure everything from my character screen by right-clicking it and just insure, because I usually never insure everything. So, and it's just as quick to do it that way, basically, if you're a bit fluid with it. Adding a healing service to the main menu at Therapist. Also nice, because currently I believe you only have it in the after raid screen, and then when you click through it, if you don't heal there, you have no other way of healing from Therapist. You have to heal with your own meds. So that would be very cool. More posters for the hideout. Okay. Mouse sensitivity settings for several types of sights. This is interesting, because I'm assuming this means that you can set different sensitivity scaling when you're using a 4-scope compared to a 2x or a 1x. So very interesting. Again, I don't know how much I would use it, to be honest. I probably wouldn't at all. But yeah, some people might like that. And separation of achievements from the, apparently, I think the game. So like the game achievements and then the event achievements is what I understood from this. So apparently those are going to be separated somehow. So yeah, that's pretty much what we got from the interview, and then the neck hitbox change, which is the big thing that I'm honestly more excited about that than I am any of this interview stuff, because that is just a huge change and it's going to be so good for the game. So I'm very, very excited about that. But yeah, a lot of interesting stuff in the interview, a lot of little bits of information that might be intriguing for a lot of people. So let me know what you guys think about the info that we got in the interview and the future of Tarkov, what we're going to get implemented in the future, maybe, or hopefully, or maybe not in some cases, or hopefully not in some cases. So yeah, let me know what you guys think, and thanks for watching the video. I will see you guys in the next one. Take care.